Okay, we're going.
We're going.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know. So we didn't talk about we didn't plan this out really, besides the topic of talking about YouTube, talking about what it's like to do this. Should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah.
All right. Go for it.
My name is Jordan Finiseth. I often go by the moniker of Aware One. I'm interested in cryptocurrencies as well as psychology and greater population issues and the psyche of what humanity is going through and stuff like that.
So you're not just speculating on Beanie Babies?
Nope.
My name's Eric Zachman. I live in Spokane. I started with money, studying money as like, how do I make this stuff more efficiently so I can spend more time with my family? But then I really got into like trying to figure out what money actually is and studying the US dollar and how it works and where it comes from and the rules of it and blah, blah, blah. And then learned about Bitcoin for the first time, like end of 12, beginning of 13, and started looking at it as the next step in the evolution of money, as a possible replacement for this thing that I was quickly learning I really didn't like, called the US dollar. Then went on a crazy adventure and met Jordan down in Santa Rosa. And now we're doing this.
I'm sorry, I'm just filling out some of the YouTube. I'm figuring out the YouTube process while we're doing this. It's exciting.
All right, so how many videos have you made, do you think?
I've only made about 6 videos so far. I made a few. I was making them almost daily for a little bit, but then I just kind of got involved in other things. Not a lot of people were watching them, so my attention got taken somewhere else, but I want to bring it back.
All right. How's it feel? Like putting yourself up on this YouTube thing?
Well, it's weird because you don't really think about it too much because there's just this little camera right here. So you're just kind of talking at the screen. It's not until like you post a video and you come back and somebody's commented, you're like, oh crap, my stuff's out there. But half the time it just feels like I'm just talking to myself. I'm just like free associating the words or the thoughts that I'm having at a camera, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I made a bunch now. I'm probably at 150 or something videos. But it's weird. And I still have a couple hundred subscribers. And like my view counts have been going down, getting 10, 15, 20 views on a video. And it is. Like I'm literally sitting alone right now with the microphone and the camera. And this is more interactive because I'm talking to you. But then at the same time, we're putting it up on the internet. And I made one this morning walking around, and yeah, like I'm walking around with my phone looking like an idiot to anybody else in the real world. Hardly anybody's seeing it. But then at the same time, I'm putting it up, and it's just out there now. It gets recorded. Google has it. And even if I delete it off, I'm sure Google has a copy of it. Now, literally, my thoughts, me, are recorded, and other people can pull it up. It's a wild thing. It's a wild feeling.
As long as the things that we have recorded exist, they'll be able to find you talking. Yes.
Right.
And like we have to see here is this. I like the Bitcoin Vin video he did the other day because he really laid out like what's going on with crypto movement and like the future of paying for our attention. Like we're moving from a world where in the future we used to watch TV and there was commercials and we paid to watch TV.
Right.
To where we're going to be watching stuff and people are going to pay us to watch their commercials.
Right.
Like they're going to start paying people for their attention.
Right.
And I think this started with YouTube. Like cable prices and all this stuff have been going up for years, but I think it's because the older people that watch cable are still watching it. Some of them have stopped, but all us younger people we don't really watch cable, especially the younger generations. They're watching each other on YouTube. They're like, let me get value from my friends or other people and share the things I'm interested in rather than just hearing a talking head on the screen.
Right. I watched that same video. from Bitcoin Ben. And yeah, I mean it's the same thing, right? Like there was just a middleman. The middleman got paid by the advertiser, and the middleman put our eyeballs in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're cutting out the middleman, and the advertiser just pays us directly for watching it.
Mm-hmm. And it was this greater. It's more about information, like we were talking about in the past. I think block these things all off. Make it even. Okay. Yeah, like you think back even to history, what we're taught in schools. It's a lot easier to teach everybody the same thing when you control what's being taught and you control the books that are being released or the videos and stuff that are being put out. What this is allowing is anybody to become an expert, quote unquote, do some research about something and put it out there, and then have other people be able to access it and not be censored and stuff like that. And like that video, he talked about how, like they even talked about, or the one I told you about with the Cliff High, the older video, he was bringing up how there's this movement with the flat earthers and stuff, and he's like, I like it because it's actually getting people to question the narrative that we've always been taught versus just believing what we've been fed.
Right.
Like his whole talk on it, the video was specifically talking about the sun, and I'm just like astronauts can't see the sun when they're in space. You have the only way they can see it is if there's a piece of glass with little etches on it to give it something to reflect off of. Now this concept is really hard to get. My mind was like, I can't. No, I'm not going to try and think about it, and I had to process it until it would like hurt. Nothing we see in space is a light emitting source. All we ever see is a reflection of light. You have to realize that's the same with the sun. It's not emitting light. Something's happening and we're seeing the reflection of light coming off of it.
And where does the light come from originally then?
And so that's what you think about. Like, what is light? I was sitting in the shower last night, like even trying to contemplate what is light. So think about a halogen light bulb or a light bulb. There's a piece of metal in it. It heats up, but there's always a vacuum and a gas. Just like the sun is, what we're seeing is the burning gas on the outside because it's so hot. The metal is so hot that the sun's made of metal, and it's so hot that there's gas around it that's igniting, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay.
But it's not this molten lava thing emitting light. Like it is, but it's not. It's really, really hard to think about. But like even this concept just totally blew my mind because it's this piece of information that when you actually look into it and you like logically think about it, even looking up at stars and planets, they're all just reflections of light. It makes you reevaluate what we've been taught. And it's like, oh crap. But I wouldn't have figured that out without a YouTube video.
Right. Okay, so how does it feel now to know that, I mean, like, literally anybody, pretty much anybody on the planet could be in real time right now watching you say that?
You know, I used to be a counselor, right? And I worked with a lot of high schoolers, and I say, we all got this high school mentality where we think everybody's paying attention to us or judging us or looking at us. It's like now they actually are. But I think it works for some people that like a lot of attention. For some people that need to expand it but can't just get out in front of a full crowd. It's easy to sit in front of your computer and talk to a screen. Even if you see there's these numbers that are people, viewers, it's not the same thing as I've talked in front of a crowd. It's not the same thing as being up on a stage and like 1,000 people sitting there like, what are you saying? You can have like 10,000 people on here and you not even know because you're just talking to your screen.
Interesting. It feels, I think, the opposite to me. If I understood you right, of what you just said, I think it's opposite to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went and did it. In Santa Rosa, we had like 20 people. But in San Francisco and Florida, we each had like 50 or 60 people. And even if it was 10,000, I think that'd be easier for me because it's like real. It's real. I'm in the room with those people talking to them. I know that it's I mean, maybe it would be recorded, but it's like a right then thing. Whereas making a YouTube video, who knows who will see this when?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, here's a way of saying it, I guess. Like real life talking to people is so much more concrete. Even if it is in a room, I think it's easier for me because it's more concrete. I like know what's happening. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I put it on YouTube, I'm letting parts of my brain out, and I don't know what's going to happen with them. I don't know who's going to see them or where they're going to go or how they're going to be used or any of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's taking responsibility for people's experience.
What do you mean?
Like you worrying about how they're going to take it, what they're going to do. Are you worried about not being able to see their reaction?
It's just a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling for me to be sitting here right now doing this while simultaneously knowing, like, and trying to like balance the things. Like I'm talking to you, but at the same time, there's thoughts going through my brain of like, I don't want to sit here silent for too long because then it'll be a bad YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
Like
well, that's the whole being comfortable with silence thing. Like even when you're doing a speech on stage, people like, I got to feel every single second with a word. Like, and I learned this in doing therapy. Sometimes silence is powerful. You don't need to always be filling it with words. But it's like one of my first client. He would sit there. He would. You could tell he was thinking about something, but he'd be like pensive, like. And like we were training therapists, so the sessions were all being recorded, and later on we'd watch it in my practicum with my other training therapists. And like I was sitting there, I'm like playing the video, and they were all going nuts because this guy sat there for like a minute without saying anything, and I was just like, just waiting, like perfectly fine. They were going crazy because they couldn't withstand the silence. Like they would, like allowing him to process. Like there's some, like our minds, like you're saying, as soon as it's silence, the voice in your head starts running. What should I say next? What are they thinking? How are they responding? And all this stuff. And that's like for me the meditation aspect of it. Quiet that voice down because you realize sometimes silence is golden.
Right.
And the judgments really just seem to stymie growth or prevent you from progressing further.
Right.
But yeah, this is an interesting experience. I like it.
It's weird, man. So then another kind of angle on it. I made a video. I mean, this is like a chain of events. I made a video and then people responded. And then I made a video yesterday in response to it. And people responded to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's on my brain. I'm like interacting with people who I don't know. But it's
well, for years I kind of like looking at the evolution of humanity, and I was like, I hate this. Countries and China's over here developing technology, US is over here, Russia's over here, and we're like, let's race to be the best. I'm like, each culture has a different viewpoint and something to offer. What we've needed to do is bring all these parties together, contribute their ideas, and then make something that's grander above them all. But we've had this national or patriotic thing, or my country's better than your country thing. And what the whole cryptocurrency revolution, and I think it started more with it started with the internet, obviously. The cryptocurrencies is the next layer to the internet. But it's made it so people can just put it out there and nobody can claim ownership to all these things right away. Like all the different crypto projects are open sourced. Like they just voluntarily, we're going to put it on GitHub and it's open source. Bah! You can't, that immediately trumps the corporations wanting to make patents and copyright everything. And the same thing is happening with all these videos and information is no longer just for the wealthy or the people that can afford it or the people that can have access to it. What this is making is information is going to be accessible to everyone everywhere.
Right.
And that just opens up the conscious attention to all these different ideas. And I think we're driven to start making videos like this and stuff because we want to facilitate this connection of all these people rather than just having big corporations or nodes as the thing that everybody watches. We're dispersing that and making a bunch of little dots everywhere where everybody connects around the planet.
Right. Right. And it does. It feels important to me to take part in that.
Mm-hmm. We're open sourcing the world. They weren't doing it. The people that were in charge or whatever weren't. So the multitudes are like, we'll take care of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like, and I like, because you can't, like, when you talk in front of 10,000 people, it might be easier or different, but you can't necessarily take questions and answers from them and really have an in-depth conversation. I like this setting because you can have a chat box, you can have people ask questions, and you can come back and refer to it, but you can more actively engage the community and get feedback and hear those perspectives that you might not have heard when it's a big auditorium where you can't really have that venue or that access.
Right. There is, though, like, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing for this video I put out yesterday. I literally thought on it for 5 or 6 hours, like putting it together, the thought pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's a couple things in there, but putting this thought pattern together for 5 or 6 hours and put it out, it's such a one-way thing. Then some nameless, faceless circle writes a comment. It's like, they're getting so much of me, and then I just get this little comment back. I don't know who it is. I don't know where it's coming from. And then the words that they put in the comment, I'm trying to figure out what they actually mean by that. And there's so much more in that than just that set of words. So I find it really hard to interact that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then at the same time, there's, like, Joe Rogan is doing it with, he has 3 million subscribers. They guess 10 million views on his podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing that one-way communication with 10,000 people at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 10 million people, like, after a 3-hour podcast with Joe, you know pretty darn well, like, kind of who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
Then after 12 podcasts, like, you could, if you watched all those, you know inside and out who Joe Rogan is.
Mm-hmm.
10 million people. And then he gets this, like, little point of information from those 10 million people. It's such a weird way of interacting.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you tell me how it's been different for our whole lives?
What do you mean?
We grew up watching TV. How is it different? Now there's actually a point to get back to him, but before that, there wasn't even that little point. We just watched TV.
Right.
So like before it was they get letters in the mail. People
right.
call into the station. You'll just
right.
call on the switchboard.
right.
Now it's like it's a slow progression towards more access and more connection, and even that is blowing our minds.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot. I mean, now there's a lot more of us, but. And I would say YouTube is not as extreme, like you just said. YouTube is not as extreme as being on TV,
mm-hmm.
but same kind of thing. So you personally decided to go from being one of the 10 million that are watching mm-hmm. to one of the few that are putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
it's crazy being on this side. It feels weird to me. It feels super weird. It doesn't. not for you.
To me, it feels like a bigger microphone for the voice in my head.
Right.
Like that's why I said I've done enough like self-observation, sit and meditate for enough, and you realize there's always this blaring voice talking. Now I'm just sharing that voice with somebody else. Like, oh God, I can't listen to you anymore. Talk to somebody else. But I don't know. Like I like it because then it's not just me having a conversation with myself. Like I like throwing my ideas out there and having somebody be like, "That's bullshit," or like, "Man, that's brilliant. Let's discuss that," because then it's the two-way interaction. I don't know. For me, that's what all of this exists for, is to communicate, interact with another person. And I love that. Like going back, for me, I was always big on the internet. I was shy when I was younger, so I started doing like online dating when I was in high school. So the medium of the internet took away a certain threat of the in-person interaction, I think, that some people feel. And now, like, I can build these relationships with people. I can interact and I can meet them in person, and it's a much more seamless event for me, I suppose.
I think it's the opposite for me again. Like I feel more threatened. I feel more threatened putting myself out on the internet than I do doing it in real life. If I'm interacting with a person in real life, I know that it's just us, we're talking, and that moment is gone. Whereas now that we're doing it, and I mean, you and I talked for a couple hours the other day, that whole thing is gone. I mean, maybe they do have a recording of that, but...
Well, and this is bringing me up to the topic I brought up. I think this whole thing is like, give things like information, knowledge. Think of it as a living thing. And for billions of years that we know of, the information and the events that have happened on this planet are just gone. And we read the Bible. People read the Bible, all these old history books, and like they might be like 5% right, but we don't know, because half of it's like oral traditions get passed down and everything gets mixed up in the middle. But I think the information itself is a living thing that wants to be recorded, like a record kept, and that's why like there's this information is pushing us to make a thing that records information more soundly, because like as a species evolving, like I mentioned this before, like if we didn't have to learn every lesson several times because we didn't have it written down somewhere, maybe we would evolve faster. But we have to have a proper recording of information, and then you start multiplying the number of people providing information like we're doing now. Before there was a few people on TV, but now you got millions of people making videos online. And again, we're talking about artificial intelligence that can just compile and correlate data.
Right.
Every person talking on video is another point of data that goes into this grander web of data that is if you put it like in a virtual world, you would see our world manifested on a virtual landscape. That's what's building, like the whole digital movement's moving towards it. You're going to be able to plug into a virtual world and see the world that we exist in, just like on Ready Player One. And it's all this information and data going forward and finding better ways and more efficient ways to be recorded and passed on.
Right. It is. I think this is another way of saying the same thing. Obviously, I wasn't alive in 1900, but in 1900, the sources that you could go to learn from were a lot fewer. And they were a lot less advanced because the sources they could go to learn from were a lot fewer and a lot less efficient. And now I can jump on YouTube and go and learn from 20 different people on double speed that all have done that for a long time. So what they have is a lot more to share, and I can get from them a lot more efficiently.
And each person has we all have a beautifully unique perspective on things. I can ask you your perspective, and then I can go ask somebody else. And what that does is it creates a third new perspective in me. Because I take my perspective, I take these other ones, and I make something. That's what I'm saying. Like, we have people from developing things from all over the planet, bring them together, and what results is something that's greater than everything. But we have to get past this us versus them mentality. And I think the YouTube is doing that. Like, if you can just talk. What you're talking, and you're like you're saying, you can watch Joe Rogan, you can know the whole Joe Rogan, you can know everything about that man, and everybody that out there makes videos does that. So what happens when somebody over in the Middle East, or somebody that has a certain perspective of Americans, finds my video or finds your video and hears you start talking and realizes like, holy crap, that person might not be the same religion or whatever as me, but they think the same things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks down this barrier of like, they're us versus them. We're separate. We're different. The narrative we've all been taught about all these different things falls apart when you realize other people are just people.
Right.
People, some people, opposite people. Some people that would prefer to talk on a camera, and some people that would prefer to talk 10,000 people live.
Right. It's pretty wild, man. Like how connected we all are becoming.
Well,
do you know what?
I'm a spiritual person and a meditator. I'm like, well, if you think that's wild, don't even get into the real connection. Like, there's nothing between you and me. Even like when you're up in Washington, I'm here. I can piggyback a particle from me to you because I'm not the particles of this body. I'm the consciousness that surrounds every particle. So the connection between us is, I'm really sounding crazy, but like the matter of our physical world is not who we are. So the thing that we are is there's no disconnection between any of it.
Well, let me ask though, isn't it true that the more people who come to think that way, the more connected we are?
Mm-hmm.
So even if that has always been happening,
mm-hmm.
if only 1% of people knew, then we still have this barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if 5% of people now accept that.
And what is this doing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's efficiently connecting everybody. Like, I think I said it at your thing, and I had like my idea at the Money Changers event. I'm like, I think the Tower of Babel was that we're all in the Tower of Babel right now. I have my thoughts and my perspective of the world, and in time my internal voice is like blah 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 blah, and I can try and explain it to you like I just did, and it didn't make sense because it's babble. It's like I'm trying to express my spiritual experience of this life, and I'm trying to put words on it, but words don't really fully encapsulate it, so it doesn't ever fully convey the meaning to you. So it's like we all start to develop definitions and meanings to things, and we find people that have similar meanings so we can actually communicate with each other, because the babble we're speaking is somewhat close. So we have groups, and you get stuck in groupthink because you start to perceive the world a certain way, and then you find other people that can speak your same language, and you agree, you see the same thing. Woo! Yeah, okay, we're not crazy. Then you see this other group that's like, they don't see that. They're crazy. That's how we get into this whole separation thing. But I think sharing perspectives with people like this on YouTube and just seeing all the different things is going to break down these barriers of separation and realize we're all kind of crazy humans that have our own unique perspective. But if we can just share them and accept other people, we can all move forward.
Okay, I think I lost you. So are you saying we're building the Tower of Babel by...
The Tower of Babel is the only way you could ever communicate or explain, convey an idea to somebody that was actually the way you did it, that you experienced, I think would be like telepathy. Like, other than that, you're speaking words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's babble because the words you're speaking is going to be completely unique to you. Like, even when I say, if I say like a swastika, you might have a different perspective of swastika. For me, I don't even think about Hitler or any of that shit anymore. I think about the older ancient Indian traditions that use it as a very powerful symbol. And I could have a swastika around my room, or I could have one on me and people be like, oh, you're racist. I'm like, no. Your definition of that is different than mine.
Right.
Babble. It's babble. We see different things, we say different words. Like, I know, it's just every time in therapy when people would use the words, I say, define that word for me so I can make sure that I'm using it in the same context that you understand it. Because if I'm using a word but it means something different to you, what I'm saying isn't going to be the same to you.
Yep.
It's babble. We have to figure out, we have to agree on the words we're saying and what they mean. But until then, it's just bad.
So you're saying there was a Tower of Babel, and then I'm trying to figure out how you're relating it to the Bible story. So there was the Tower of Babel.
Think of the Bible as parables, as people. We don't understand things logically. We have to be told stories that relate to real world. So it's like it's this concept of everybody spoke the same language, and then God was like, no. And then we all spoke a different language. And I think before it was like telepathy or some kind of just not verbal communication. And then it was like, let's stop that. And then we all separated and we have to develop these languages. But the Tower of Babel was like, it's a metaphor for us living our lives and trying to communicate. It's this tower of mixed meanings or mixed understandings. And it's Babel if you're not opening yourself up to trying to understand another person's perspective.
So is what you're saying, like back then, the story is that there was a Tower of Babel and then we all got spread out.
Mm-hmm.
Are we coming back to that?
Yep. And it's just cycles. That's like cycles. The duality. We're in a dualistic world. I haven't found a way out of it yet. So as long as that's the case, you're gonna cycle between two ends of a spectrum. It's just the way it is. Try and hold it in one spot for too long, and there's a force that will come and push it along.
Right. I've been talking about the Tower of Babel in a completely different way, but I want to save that for a second. So, do you think it collapses again? If it was this and then it got spread out, and we're bringing it back to this, do you think that's, whether it's good or bad, eventually we'll get back to that, and then it will spread out again?
Why do you see that as a problem?
See it as a problem. No. So let me change topics a little bit. So, you know Jordan Peterson?
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched his Bible series?
I've seen some of them.
Okay. I find it fascinating. I think he does just a great job of digging into those stories that have a lot of information in them. Like, I think he nails it. They are very condensed information over a long, long time. And he digs into the Tower of Babel story. And when he did it, I was just like, boom, I think you nailed it. The first time I listened to it, I basically went with it. I think you nailed it. And I've been using the same analogy. And he talks about it being these structures of whether it's a company structure or a government structure, or now we're trying to make a world government where we all think the same way. We keep building this structure, and the politician gets farther away from the people on the bottom because we're all supposed to act the same way. And then we have this political correctness thing where we all are supposed to think the same way. And if you step outside of that, and trying to group everybody into the same thing. And that this whole decentralization thing that's happening is the Tower of Babel crumbling. We've been through TV, through so few people having so much power. We've built the Tower of Babel, and then what we're going through right now is it falling apart. And now we're back to being individuals, and you and I are just chatting on the internet, and our language is the opposite of what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, it's in that view, it's almost like the Tower of Babel is like a what are those things? The fly zappers. It's attracting the fly, like and we're trying to destroy it so we can get away from this centralized idea. And that's like from a spiritual perspective. Before this, when it was just God, that's just one thing. One thing. And I'm like, God got bored as shit, right? I need two. Bam, duality. Just to have another.
Right.
Oh, I totally lost my train of thought. So as a spiritual person, I'm meditating. I'm like, I want to get back to the oneness of God. If you look at that take a purely Christian perspective, if God was one, created the world to not be one anymore, and I'm like, I want to get back to one, I'm the Antichrist. I'm going against God's edict to create everything. But that's my internal spiritual goal is, no, I want to find this bliss. I want to connect. I want to find the connection between everything.
Right.
It's this trick of duality. It came up, it goes apart. He's explaining it's always this dualistic perspective of 1 to 2 coming together, falling apart. Just because all that, maybe the only reason that we're able to have this conversation now is because that Tower of Babel existed in the first place. Society had to build it up, it all come together, and then we all had to be like, all right, we all gonna agree that this isn't right. Let's break this apart, do this what we're doing now, and start over. Like, to me, it's, I don't know, it's not even like with the cycles. There's never a stop point. It's always just a transition to the next thing, and the next thing can only exist with the previous thing having happened. When we get caught up as humans is judging previous or the next thing as good or bad, and that's playing duality. But I got off topic of the Tower of Babel thing, but it's a different use of the metaphor more than anything, what I see.
Yeah.
And what he's saying makes sense to me too. It's like we've constructed this centralized thing of society, but
and it's unsustainable.
It is, and
we're just too different. We can't all be in that same stupid structure where we all agree on everything. We don't all agree on everything. We need to.
And you just look at nature, biology. There's not one. Why are there 3 different blood types of humans? Because if one disease came along that took out a blood type and they were all the same blood type, we'd all be dead.
Right.
Everything has to diversify in order to survive, including thoughts, including ways to perceive the world, includes ways of interacting. Like, that's what people like Bitcoin maximalists, or anybody that thinks that something's going to be just one way, you're not paying attention to duality. It's not feasible for anything to be just one thing.
Do you know Buckminster Fuller?
Mm-hmm.
Have you read Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth?
Mm-mm.
It's a fascinating little book. But I think the main things that he's trying to get across there is the danger of over-specialization. And he attributes the death of every species to over-specialization.
Mm-hmm.
We basically, any species built this Tower of Babel, we all adapted and became the same kind of thing. And then the way nature works, something changed, and we just all died.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing you're saying. If we get all 2 on the same page, then we're not adaptable enough.
Nope.
We have all these different ways of handling stuff and of thinking and of whatever. Then something happens and we can get hurt, but we're still fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's this whole concepts like perfection or getting everybody on this. To me, that's the devil. That's like, there's no such thing. I've always, from the time I was born, I'm like, embrace your perfect imperfections, because that's what really makes you awesome.
Right.
Like, the things that make us different is what God is looking for. I always say, like, God's waiting for people to make a choice, and when you do, and so there's good. We have our internal morals, all right? You do. You're gonna do things. Whatever you do is gonna come back to you. That's just the way it is. But God's not sitting there like, oh, you made a bad choice. I'm gonna punish you. God's like, you want that? There you go. Let's see how that works out. Oh man, that decision didn't work out so good, but you learned from it, right?
Right. Right.
And I use God just so everybody. I say God just because I was raised Christian. I'm not a Christian per se anymore. I'm a Jordanist. I believe the Jordan. But I just use it because it's a word. It's the universe. There's something manifesting all of us inside of us. Something manifesting reality. The thing that's manifesting all reality is God. Okay, it's not a being. It's a larger collection of energy that's presenting all of this to us for our pleasure and experience.
Do you know Scott Adams? He wrote Dilbert. He writes Dilbert. He has started doing all kinds of different stuff. He's been a writer for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2001, I think, he wrote a book called God's Debris. And it was basically saying what you're saying, that God was the Tower of Babel. God knew everything was everything and got bored.
Mm-hmm.
So he blew himself into bits. and we are all the little bits of God.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to come back to being God.
Mm-hmm. The Antichrist. It's the opposite. If God dispersed itself, if something is putting it back together, isn't that the opposite of what God wanted? I don't know. And these are just thoughts. These aren't like, don't judge yourself for them. This is just things you think about when you meditate, right?
Wouldn't it be God though? Like, if God is the thing that knows everything, God blew himself to pieces.
Welcome.
And now we're coming back to being God.
When you think about reality, what's going on is God's like, I'm omnipotent and aware. Amnesia. Because
that'd be boring.
It'd be boring as fuck.
To know everything, to be able to do anything all the time.
Can you think of a better definition of hell?
Right.
That's it. And yet we're down here judging the shit out of ourselves and all this stuff. And it's like, you're not getting it, man. We're here to experience. And thank all the people that have given you a negative experience, because you wouldn't know what an experience was without them.
Right. Like, which way are we going? By decentralizing? Are we centralizing?
Welcome to duality, my friend. It's you can't, like, there's a way out, and it's not plain. Like the meditation retreat I went to, the 10-day meditation retreats all time. You sit down, you sit there for an hour, and you're scanning your body, and you find a sensation, and you're like, it's a sensation. You don't say that's a bad sensation. You don't call it pain. You don't call it anything. It's a sensation. It starts working your consciousness to not judge every single thing you see out there as good or bad, because that is the puzzle of duality, and you're sucked in. The way that the media is able to get us all with, they present sides and they get you to choose one, and then they reinforce one, and then you're trapped. The only way out is to not see two different sides and be like, oh, I understand both perspectives, therefore I can't take either one of them, or I can't only identify with one side because they're both valid. Right. And what happens is the third thing emerges. And you got to get all of humanity to start doing this. Or the more, 10%, 15%, 20%, to change how we're all interacting with each other.
Right. Would it be then, and this is hard to put into words, is it just that taking a side is evil?
No, it's thinking that the other side's wrong or bad.
Right.
You can take a side, but if you are allowing yourself to take a side, and this again, Bible, do unto others as you would have them do to you. If you're taking your side and you want other people to accept your side and allow you to have your viewpoint, you have to do the exact same thing for everybody else.
Right.
Especially if their viewpoint is the opposite of yours.
Right. Is that what good is?
Good, bad,
Yeah.
good. Those are Those are subjective. That's duality. That's the labeling of an experience.
I'm trying to use them in a different way than I think you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that you're saying it's bad to have good and bad, right?
You know, I'm saying that that's the way that the world's operating right now. I'm saying that we're playing good and bad. And the thing that, like, the problem that we're all stuck in is playing the game of good or bad. Or the thing that we're, I don't know, like,
is that a problem, or is that
not the game we're playing. It's the game we're playing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of using them in two different ways. If there's good and bad, and it's bad to not recognize that, and it's good to recognize that.
Okay. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Here's a good person. Here's a bad person. Does this bad person think that they're bad?
No.
What do they think? They're good.
Yeah.
And this person's bad.
Yeah.
And this person thinks they're good, and this person's bad. Who's right?
Neither. You're both wrong. You're both wrong. You're both bad.
Are they both right or both wrong? Or are they just being? See, that's judging. Judging the being. We can't even, that's plain duality. Looking at, that's what I'm saying, that you got the trap. It's hard to even get outside of the trap of duality. It's neither. It's not good or bad. It just is. And that's, you see, you're realizing the trap of duality we're all stuck in. We see, we're like, bad, good. It has to be, there's two things, it has to be one or the other. It's neither. That's why the only way I've found to work on this is those 10-day meditation retreat where you sit three times a day. You sit for an hour and you don't move. And they're like, don't call anything good or bad. And after 10 days, your mind's like, it's just because from the time we're born, we're taught to label things as good or bad. That's good, that's bad. Judge, 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 judge. Until we get to where this insane adults that see the world, we're judging the world, we're seeing things that we're afraid of and all this stuff, and that's hell. That's how, like, the only way to unwork that is to not label things so much. It's attachment to a label.
I think you're breaking what you're saying now, though.
What?
You said that's hell. Having
my experience of it. I'm coming from a therapist. People come to me like, Jordan, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that, and that. And what I've determined is it's this internal dialogue that they're having inside of our heads that make us feel these ways. There's a part of you that feels a certain way, and then you do actions, and another part of you judges the shit out of you for those actions. You're like, you're bad for doing that. And inside you feel depressed. And I say, I have to use these words in order to converse with people and have a conversation, but I don't necessarily believe in calling things as good or bad. Like, I try to explain this. You know, have you seen that movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves? Mm-hmm. Well, in it, like, he's I fight for the good side, and there's the people that fight for the devil, and there's this witch doctor that has a bar. That's like, hey, you guys everybody can come to my bar. Just don't do shit in my bar. I'm gonna kill you. But the good side and the bad side can come in here and hang out and agree to get along in my bar. I'm like that. I'm that bartender that's like, come in. Don't do bad shit to me, and I won't unleash my power on you. But I allow both because they're both valid things that exist because they're created. They are there, so they are valid.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's not to say that I do bad things. If somebody bad starts doing bad things to me and my family, I will have a different reaction to it. But I'm not just going to be like, oh, that person might do a bad thing, let me go do something to them. I'm just going to, oh, wait. It's just, I don't know. That's one approach to life.
I think I was having the same conversation with my sister the other day. I think we're going into a time where you have to be much more willing to let other people be other people. And if you fight that, it's not going to turn out well. We're decentralizing all the different ideas are getting louder. They're getting more prevalent. They're getting out. And what am I saying?
We all have to work on acceptance.
Yeah. Like we're realizing, here's what I'm saying. Political correctness is this thing of trying to force other people to be the way you want them to be. I think that's the Tower of Babel. And that can't work. It's not sustainable. We can't keep building the same thing taller and taller and taller and forcing more people into the same way of thinking. So now there's like this backlash of people saying, no, we're all different. And we need to give each other the space to all be different.
But and people need to realize, and I think this is the block that we have, is that we'll express that, but we won't accept other people as they are. It's like,
hard.
It's hard. It's really hard. That's the trick. People are like, oh, this is the way I am, but then they'll see somebody that's not the way they are. And they'll be like, you need to be like me. And it's like, no. I need to be me, and you need to be you. And that's why I said the whole do unto others. Like, I love understanding my crazy because it allows me to accept other people's crazy. Because all I really want is for people to accept me as I am. And the best way I found to do that is to just accept people as they are. And it's like a self-fulfilling, self-reinforcing thing, because you no longer attract the people that aren't going to accept you, and you'll attract people that are different than you, but are thirsting for finding different people that will accept them and that they want to accept. And that's what's happening. It's this talking on videos. You can't, like I said, back when I was shy, so I would do online dating. The pool of people around me wasn't filling my needs, so I outsourced it. I spread it out around the world. I'm speaking to a wider audience so that the few people that do mesh with what I'm saying can find it and ping back. And then we can start to build that network out. We're all sitting around feeling like we're alone, not realizing there's a whole lot of people that think similarly. Now we have the tool to access them.
Yep. I think you nailed it. I think that Joe Rogan, I think he's one of the main catalysts of this thing. Like one of the central points of sitting down and having conversations and disagreeing with people and letting them be people and just having disagreements.
Yeah, there's several people. He's one person I would love to have a conversation with. I'd love to have a conversation with him. I'd love to have a conversation with Jordan Peterson. Even a couple of the crypto guys like Bitcoin Ben and Jay Snip and those guys. They're all like, I don't know. I love good conversations. It's one of my favorite things on this planet.
And Jordan Peterson, the same thing. Like he's talking about these ideas and exploring these ideas, and he blew up because he put his foot down to the Tower of Babel. He put his foot down and said, no, you're not going to force me to use those words. That was the starting point of the whole Jordan Peterson thing that's happening right now.
I think I was put on this earth to give people back their personal power, and I think that's what it's doing. Like, I can make my own choices. I can be involved in the world. I can have relationships. I can interact with people, and I don't need a ruler lording over me. I can practice good morals. I can be an adult And the world has led people to like wanting to be taken care of and needing to be led. And like this is just a cycle. They're like, oh, centralized, and now the decentralization. And I said when I studied my senior project when I studied psychology was looking into locus of control, which internal, external locus of control. Do you think you're in control of your life and your decisions affect your life, or do you think outside forces impact your life more? Mm-hmm. I think our whole world has been more external locus of control. We like to think out there, and it's just this movement. The cycle is moving to the whole world's moving to a more internal locus of control, where I'm in control of my stuff, where I'm in control of my survivability and my power. Right. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to outsource my power because it's easier. I'll take responsibility for both the good and the bad. Right. It's just, and that's how you say it. It's the cycle. Eventually we'll be all empowered, strong people. I think that's magic. Boom. And then something happens and we come back to the centralization, and then it doesn't because God gets bored of the same thing.
Yeah. So how about this? Like a real tied in real world. Donald Trump is very him. Mm-hmm. His locus of control is his. Mm-hmm. Like he's whatever you think about him, he makes stuff happen. He decides I want to make this happen, and then he makes it happen.
For all the people that are whatever, I'm like, I don't care what major war are we fighting right now. There's peace in Korea. All the shit that's not happened the last 20 years has started happening. Why? I don't know. It's the way it's going. So something's happening, people. We all need to wake up. Right. Yeah, I don't know. People need to not. Again, I'm the owner of that bar. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. I've done counseling with people that are sexual molesters, like child predators. Like my job as a therapist was to try and accept this person as a person, to give them the experience of a valid human being. Right. And eventually you start to realize that all people are people having their experience. And just because you don't like the words they say doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad person.
Right. That feels, I like this. I feel like we are doing a good job summing it up. Like that thing's been growing, that political correctness thing, that group of people trying to force you. Mm-hmm. Now Donald Trump is breaking that and creating a wake where it's easier to break it in your own life because Donald Trump broke it in the society way. Mm-hmm. And then Kanye comes out and does the same thing.
And we're all model behaviors. Like I'm a behaviorist. Models and follow. Every behavior we learn from modeling.
Yep. I mean, I say the same thing about Jeff Berwick. Like Jeff Berwick makes it so much easier for me to come out and take positions that might be used to sound radical. Mm-hmm. But he just did it. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump just did it. And Jeff Berwick doesn't agree with Donald Trump at all. But they're both on the same team of just like...
What this is good for, this, is different people. We were talking about this the other day. We're like, man, why do we got to be the first person to take the step all the goddamn time? This is giving all those people, all of us out there that can take the first step. This is the first step. We're putting a video out there just to show people. We're modeling like, hey, look, we have more people have these thoughts. Yep. And if we just connect with each other, we can stop playing the stupid narrative that they're telling us. Right. We can choose to take this world a different place. And that's cryptocurrencies. They're choosing to store their value somewhere else. All right. I gotta go into work pretty soon.
All right. Give me another 2 minutes. All right. I can't find the other book, but I started comparing it. The Power of Positive Thinking. This was written by Donald Trump's pastor. Like Donald Trump went to the church that this guy taught at. Mm-hmm. And it is about taking control. Like take control of your own, have your own locus of control and just do it.
Read my book. That's what I wrote about.
Really? Mm-hmm. What's it called?
Manual for the Soul, a beginner's guide.
How do you get it?
You can get it on Amazon.
Okay,
Search Manual for the Soul. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. To touch right back on the topic of YouTube at the very end here. They're trying to squish us. The political correct thing is trying to squish us. The way we stop that from happening is you got to be on YouTube. Neither of us have hardly any subscribers or people watching, but I don't think it matters. I think the more of us that just talk, even if we don't have subscribers, if we just flood YouTube with a bunch of people saying what we think and just breaking that political correctness thing, here, this for damn sure. Making YouTube videos is super uncomfortable for me. I don't like it at all. But one, it's making me examine my thoughts on a whole nother level and like make sure, really dig into my thoughts and do another layer of due diligence, make sure I'm not saying something stupid. And two, it's giving me more power, more confidence to say what I think. Like my thoughts are already out there on the internet now. Might as well say it.
It's a lot harder to have thoughts and believe them when other people know that's what you believe. And when you hear it out loud, you're like, when you hear it, you present it and you hear yourself say it, and then you can go, wait, do I really believe that?
Yep.
But you can't do that when it's just bouncing around your head.
Yep.
And not when you're just talking to somebody that agrees with you.
Yep. But you start putting it on YouTube.
I think this is what leaders do. They start presenting their thoughts to people because they're ready to be challenged. Because I'm tired of being so arrogant on my thoughts. Like, I'm right. I need to talk to people that challenge me so I can prove that I'm right?
Right. And I really believe you, whoever's watching, putting these thoughts out on YouTube, like it forces you to deal with this thing. And I've gone through like 5, 6, 7 levels of it now, and like 3 or 4 days off of YouTube because I'm dealing with it again. Of like putting these thoughts out and I lost my words. I thought I had them good. Dealing with that, dealing with thinking differently and taking heat and working on your thoughts and being challenged, like that's what it is. And if we don't start standing up and carving our place where we are allowed to think differently and challenge each other and do this, then we're just going to get squished. And I think that's like the end of humanity. If we let a few people dictate to everyone what we're allowed to think, we're toast.
Well, it's not going to happen. There's too many people. It's cycles. I think that's what it was before. What we're seeing now is the emergence of the next part. And
it's a funny thing. Like, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen. But the way we keep it from happening, like we are the only ones that can keep it from happening. And the way to do that is stand up and talk.
That's why we're doing this.
Make a YouTube channel, stand up and talk. Even if you don't have subscribers, it'll be super good for you to go through these things of what it feels like to stand up and talk. All right.
Today's my birthday, by the way.
Well, happy birthday. I didn't know that.
It's a good day for me to start this quest we're on.
Cool. We'll have to pick some more topics and have more chats.
For sure.
All right.
I got
to go too. See you, man.
See ya.